Everybody, welcome to Healing ALS Sunday Community Meetings. I'm Scott Douglas along with Patricia Tomowski, and we're here to help all of you. We come to you in love. We hope that you get inspired to help take control of your healing. Okay, it's important that you are the president of your healing, that you direct those around you who should be your advisors, okay? And continue to strive and do better. We want you to be in a healing state so you can heal. When you're more relaxed and have less tension, you're not in defense mode, your cells at the cellular level are more receptive to accepting nutrients, and that's what we want you to do. We want to let everyone know that we are not medical professionals and we're not here giving you medical advice, but we are giving you the experience of 30 plus, at least 40 pals by now that we have met who have actually gained in functionality. And some of those have actually reversed their ALS and they're back into full functioning like they used to. We've done a lot of our own research and we've done a lot of traveling, and we've gone from Nova Scotia to British Columbia, zigzagged all through the United States, interviewing doctors, neurologists, patients, pals, caregivers, and all of those nutritionists and everything in between. And that's how we've gathered the information that we have about our reversals. We do have some goals. We want to be able to try to reach reversals or reversals in progress by 2022 if we can. Well, 200 by 2022 if we can. And we want to let everybody understand that this is a marathon. It does take time. It's not a sprint. But as you're going through this and doing your regular physical, like your regular detoxing, your regular regimen of supplements and things like that, we don't want you to dismiss the mindset. I want to say it's 60% mental, 40% physical. So go ahead and go through everything, but keep meditation, prayer, and all of that in the forefront and take time out for you.
So now we have Lazarus. Ember, I'm so excited that you're here, and I'm so excited that we're doing this. I'm going to introduce him, and then he's going to take over the host. What we've decided to do is part one is today. It's about healing the mind. Part two will be about healing the body. So we're going to do that next week. So all the vitamins and everything he's taking is going to be next week, because if the mind isn't in the right place, the body doesn't heal. We've just seen this over and over, and this is why we're so excited to have Tony here. So it is just, this is very quickly. His first symptoms were in 2013 with twitching. He used cannabis. It helped him with his twitching. He was finally diagnosed, and he's going to talk to you a lot more about his diagnosis, in December 2018 at age 49. So he is now 52. He lives in Ireland, and his worst symptoms were, he was 25 in the ALS FR score. So I don't even have to say that anymore. That was where he was at worst. And today he's got his voice back. His swallowing and his breathing is strong. He's calmer. He's more focused. He's got more energy. And so, Tony, I am like super, super excited to have you here.
First symptoms 2013 with twitching. I saw the GP in 2014 because of the twitching, and she referred me to a neurologist. Neurologist gave me a diagnosis of benign cramp fasciculation syndrome for the next 3 years. I lost mobility quite badly in my right leg in the winter 2016, and I got it back. I was living alone in 2017. Before that, my son living with me, but he went abroad then. And 2017, I was working my master's for teaching for Masters of Education for Teaching degree. I was given 3 days of steroids during a break in the Masters as a test to see if I had MS. And a day after the steroids, which didn't do me any good, I lost the mobility, went to my ankle and my hip really, really quickly. And I was then admitted, and they found motor neuron damage in my right leg. I was admitted a few times more, and in 2018, they diagnosed me with ALS, or motor neuron disease. So during that, when I went after I was admitted the first time, I became too compromised to continue with college. It was just far too difficult. So I ended up having to drop out of it. At the same time, I also lost my home, and I became homeless for a few months. So at that stage of actually losing my work, my capacity to work, and losing my home, there was nothing left for me to do but find a home and focus on healing. And that's what I've been doing ever since. Now, my background, before, when I was 21, I was trained in a school, the Cultural Centre of Philosophy, and I trained in that, and I was teaching applied philosophy. And afterwards, I've been teaching meditation and doing workshops in healing, and doing a lot of work in overcoming emotional trauma from growing up in an alcoholic home. So that work gave me a lot of inner skills, and I was using those inner skills to create more health, because I already realized that the doctor's point of view was very limited. And I hadn't seen, before my symptoms of ALS, I hadn't seen a GP for something like that. I think I'd seen one GP for twice in 25 years because I looked after my health. I'm gonna, that this slide is covered better in the future. The actual first symptom I had was actually in 2009. I'm still not sure how to categorize it. It was muscle dystrophy in my right leg. I'd injured my knee, and where I lived, I was on a hill, and I used to have to walk up and down the hill for walking my dog. Then I wasn't able to do it. And when I went to see the physio, she was shocked at the dystrophy in my right leg. And I just ignored it. I was just getting on. I was starting college at that point in 2009. And yeah, I was able to walk again, so I just kind of ignored it. In 2013, I noticed that I was beginning to have very intense emotions, and sometimes my mind was going blank. Now, my degree that I did starting in 2009 was in higher maths and philosophy. So I was really used to using my mind a lot. And it was very strange for me to start becoming emotionally intense over things which didn't warrant it. I had the strange twitching started, and in the winter of 2014, 2015, I was having difficulties with certain movements because I was doing mixed martial arts, just training in it. Now I wasn't fighting in it. And certain movements which related to the hip pushing up and things like that, I had real problems with them. I broke a rib, so that was kind of the end of that training. But I was also doing gym work, and I found that my right side wasn't getting any stronger. So I was pushing up with the left, but the right side wasn't doing it. And I didn't really connect it with anything neurological. I had no idea what was going on. I didn't understand it. So I considered maybe with the twitching, I considered maybe there's something psychosomatic with this. So I decided I'd pursue and see if there were some issues which I hadn't already moved through. So in the winter 2015-16, I had severe difficulties walking with my right leg. I was using it literally as a peg because the ankle and the toes didn't move at all. So I was pegging around the home. I think partly the reason why it got so bad then is because I'd been off cannabis for 6 months on the directions of my neurologist. And I thought about it. I was then like also very chronically depressed, which wasn't a normal state for me. And I realized that it must be this Lyrica that he'd given me that was doing it. So immediately I just came off because I thought if I was doing something for 3 months, I would stop doing it if it wasn't benefiting me. And I've been doing this for 6 months already. So, okay, that's enough of that. And we still didn't know anything about motor neuron damage at the time. My recovery then, and I didn't know I wasn't supposed to recover. I was months and months and months and I got some exercises from physiotherapist, and she said it was neurological, not physiological. I still didn't really take that on because I didn't know what to do with it, to be honest. But I pushed the amount of cannabis that I was taking. I increased that because I found it helped with the twitching. I'm sure that it played a role in recovering my movement and at that stage. Well, it was always very frail, but I did get the movement back. In the autumn of 17, I'd sort of spent the last couple of years trying to heal whatever was wrong with me. And I realized that I need to get back into my life. My son has finished secondary. He's moving on. He's going abroad. And I need to really get on with my own life. And so I started doing a master's in teaching, which should have been really easy for me. I'd spent 10 years teaching in my 20s, so I was used to and very comfortable with teaching. I'd raised a son, and we had a good relationship, so I was very comfortable with teaching teenagers. But I started the course and I had difficulties with concentration. I was looking at my schedule for the week, and I'd have difficulty understanding it. I started having difficulties communicating with people. It was always a kind of a mismatch going on, and there was a lot of exhaustion. If I went upstairs in a lecture hall, it would take me 20 minutes or half an hour before I could really hear what the lecturer was saying because it was, I was just exhausted. So the neurologist tried me then on during that period on a 3-day trial of steroid trial for MS, and that went very bad in the end. And I remember before going into hospital with a letter from my GP, and every step I was taking, my right calf was going into cramp with every single step. Now, I've already been developing methods of working with the limitations of my body and healing with it, and we'll get into that. But I was applying all of these techniques on my way walking up to the hospital. I was in there, and they ran lots of tests, and then they found the motor neuron damage in the right leg. And they, many of them told me that they were very surprised that I was still able to walk. And I tried to explain to them how, but it just, it was just outside their box. So at that stage, I was diagnosed with disorder of the motor neurons, which was reasonable because the damage was just in one leg. But the neurologist said to me that he wouldn't diagnose me with MND or ALS until I'd lost the ability to walk. And that was insane for me, because it meant that whatever was going on, I was going to have to go through the future of losing the ability to walk before I actually got any help. And I realized that, walking gives such a huge support to the rest of the health of the body, being able to walk to do that. So I was quite scared, really, of continuing to be under that doctor, and I changed from him, which he didn't like. Um, anyway, I left the hospital. It was more or less walking already by the time I'd left the hospital, um, and I had it wasn't unfortunately the end of admissions. In January, 3 months later, I had a bad reaction to a lumbar puncture. I was horizontal. If I tilted myself up straight at all from my spine being horizontal, it was like being hit with a tree trunk in the back of the head. Never experienced anything like it. So I was in A&E for a couple of days, and then they still didn't have any bed for me, so they sent me home. But I picked up a vomiting bug in there, so a few hours after going home, I was back in again. And after recovering from the vomiting bug, I was losing it in my foot again and my toes, and I wasn't properly under any neurologist at this stage. And so, yeah, I went home. I was kind of happy enough to go home because I'd faced this enough times myself, and I was prepared to face it myself. Well, it was very hard. It was very cold. It was very hard to stay warm in the house that I had. I had to put these kind of briquettes, solid fuel into the stove to try and stay warm. But yeah, I just needed to rest, and then the fire would go out and stuff like that. And I wasn't eating very well because by the time I'd made some food, I'd be so exhausted I wouldn't be able to eat it, and things like this. So it was really bad. But I just continued with the protocol that I've written down. I went to Orla Hardman in the Bowman Clinic, and her neurologist did a second EMG, and so they found that the motor neuron damage had spread to my arms, which didn't surprise me at all because I'd already noticed a weakness in my hands, my fingers beginning to curl in, to bend in. I'd noticed that. Anyway, she went along and said, well, yeah, the motor neuron damage has spread. I'm going to diagnose you with anxiety. Ha, 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 ha. And laughed at me, actually out loud, for real. Because, she knew exactly what she was doing. She had 30, 40 years experience, runs the biggest motor neuron disease clinic in Ireland. And she knew by denying me a valid diagnosis and by saying basically it's all in your head, that I wouldn't get any support at all. And she had one of her staff ring medical people involved in my care in Galway, and basically gave them completely false information. So yeah, I don't have any faith in doctors now. There are good doctors, and I'm sure she's done some good work with some other people, but doctors actually, feeling that they can do whatever they want and they're not answerable. It's a disgrace.
So this is a neurologist.
This is a senior neurologist. This is a professor.
Senior neurologist said she was going to diagnose you with anxiety, even though you now had upper and lower motor neuron damage.
Yeah, motor neuron damage spreading. And I've noticed that since then the diagnosis has actually changed. So if everything else is ruled out and your motor neuron damage is spreading, that's now enough for a diagnosis. At that stage, having it in 3 limbs was enough for a formal diagnosis, and I did have it in 3 limbs. So, yeah, and it's still going on. I still have problems with them there. Anyway, I realized that it was up to me. Besides the fact that they don't have a cure, they don't even have a method really to support people. So whatever recovery I could make, whatever I could do, it was up to me. And I'd lived a very autonomous life. I ran my own business where I had a fair trade jewelry workshop in India, and I wholesaled all around Ireland, and I worked in IT and project management before that, and lots of different things. So I was really used to relying on myself and doing my own thing. And part of the illness undermined that as well. It was very, very difficult for me to do my own thing. I was very affected mentally. So, at the end, I was just concentrating on doing one thing at a time, because more than that, and my mind would go blank. Not so much confused, my mind would just go blank. So I got back on the treadmill again. And just going very, very slowly, slowly, it doesn't matter. And unfortunately, I picked up a virus or something like that, and I went downhill, and I went from being able to walk on a treadmill for 10 minutes a week later to not being able to stand at all. I woke up one morning, and it got gradually worse day by day. And then the final day before calling the ambulance, I woke up and my whole right leg was in cramp, the whole thing. And I just woke up screaming with it. And I tried to stand, I got off the bed to stand up, and I just fell on the floor. And my leg was still in cramp. And so I'm trying to I'm trying to push myself towards the wall to get the cramp out of my leg. And I only have one arm working. The other arm wasn't even working. And that was pretty hellish, really. I went back into hospital, and nothing very much happened. They just wrote down, has been investigated for neurological. Basically, they didn't say anything. I was quite suicidal during that whole year. Just being faced with the loss of health, because even that it wasn't formally diagnosed, still my health was going down for no good reason. And I had no family support. There was initial positive response from my family, and then I got a severe negative response from them. They were just treating it like I was just making it up. So there was really, really dark times. And I realized that because of the way the doctors had been, I would rather take my own life than put my life in the hands of doctors. So if it really came down to me losing so much functionality that I'm dependent on their directions, I would rather take my own life than do that. And that's what they did to me. And there are good doctors as well who have integrity. Unfortunately, not enough. So for me, that was a really crisis moment. It's either heal or die. And I had, that same year I was admitted again. I'd become homeless. I no real source of income.
Because you couldn't work anymore. You couldn't hold a job.
No, there was no chance of it. I couldn't hold a job. I couldn't even find somewhere to live that was suitable, because my health was so precarious. I had problems with breathing, so I couldn't do very much. I was limping a lot as well. I had the dropped foot. I was struggling with all these symptoms on and off the whole time. A lot of problems with tooth infections. I lifted up a briefcase at one stage and damaged muscles in my pecs, and that went on for months for that to recover. And I was given some anti-inflammatory and had a bad reaction to that. And that reaction led me into a place where I wasn't able to finish sentences. And I had like the 6 inch shuffle, just walking a tiny bit. Very hard to communicate or to even to say what's going on and what's going wrong. Was really, really difficult. So I was under this a neurologist called Coonahan, and I showed him. I had the reports, EMG reports, showing the motor neuron damage going from one leg to going in the two arms. And initially, he agreed a working diagnosis of ALS. And then a week later, I found out from some other doctors that he'd actually been telling them that it was all psychological and I didn't have any neurological evidence at all. Absolute and utter lies. They will say anything that they think they can get away with. So I pushed it. I mean, I was arguing when I could, when I had the energy. I was arguing with this nonsense. And he had agreed for a third EMG. And so the third EMG was with the senior neurologist in the hospital. And he'd done the first EMG as well, so he was quite aware of all the changes and stuff. And I remember him asking me during the EMG, asking me if I had problems with memory or concentration. And there he's sticking in the needles and that, which is fine. I'm just going, memory, concentration, and that's it. That's all I could barely do was actually to remember his question. I couldn't even answer it at all. Anyway, that still wasn't the end though, because even though that was entered, I was still under this Coonahan doctor, and he actually refused to write the diagnosis into my file and was insisting on diagnosing me with cramp fasciculation syndrome. So, yeah, there's some things going on there still.
I like that, cramp fasciculation syndrome.
Yeah, benign. It doesn't have any bad effects. So, I at the end of that though, I managed to get a nice home which is warm where I live now, and it's warm during the daytime, which is so essential because Ireland is a bit cold during the day unless you have heating. And for the first time, I was beginning to be in a place where I could actually really recover. There was still more difficulties though, but over that year of 2019, because I was admitted again the end November 19, I was admitted again, and but over that year, I had improved. I was able to improve all my symptoms really. Then in November 19, it was just a single crumb which went down the wrong way, and I got such chronic coughing from it that I was completely debilitated, and went to see the GP the next day, and so she sent me in, and I can't go into all of it. I was officially diagnosed with MND. I was under the senior neurologist, but for some reasons he'd taken a dislike to me, possibly because I'd formal complaints about his colleagues, and I ended up being between nursing home and hospital in for like 3 months, and I was, their behaviour was. It was I don't know, despicable. It was despicable. One of the things that I had going wrong, which was a constant cough in the throat, and they weren't even able to ask the right questions to find out what was going on. But what would happen if I was under any strain at all, or even talking with a voice? then the larynx would squeeze, that would close over, and then there would be a cough to open it again. And eventually what do you call them? A respiratory specialist put me on morphine. And that's the thing which actually eased off the cough. And at that stage, my voice was down to a whisper. And that was like I was trying to show you, I don't know if you could see the photograph there of my right leg. I was down to 66 kilos. And I'm up to 80 kilos now. So that was my lowest point, was at that stage in the hospital. They had me on steroids for, I think, around 5 or 6 weeks, a high level of steroids. And it did so much damage to my body that, holding the electric toothbrush was a problem. I was beginning to change over to the left hand. So really, that was my lowest point, and that's a little bit more than a year ago. And now my rating is 45. Unless something is a big strain. Thank you. I've just been facing things on a day-by-day basis, and it wasn't until I was talking to somebody else with ALS, John Chart, came across each other online. He said to me, "Well, Tony, you've done it." And I'm like, "What?" He says, "You've reversed it." I'm going, "Yeah." Because I wasn't thinking about that. All I was thinking about, and it's still all I think about, is what I need to do today, or what I need to do. What's the best thing for me to do right now? So
I think that's what really we're all excited. So everybody's been asking, how did you do it? How did you do it? And I kept saying, coming on Sunday, come on Sunday. So this is how he did it. So
this is how I did it. Now, I've realized that there's a couple of caveats for it. One is that I've been doing similar or related work for 30 years. I've been meditating, since I was 18. So I had a lot of inner tools to use, which most people don't have. So that's why I'm going to try and share with you as much as I can today.
Yeah, can you go back to the previous slide just for 1 second?
Yeah.
Because that's really, so step one is really healing the mind. Okay, so you can go forward again. I just think some people might have missed that piece.
Thanks.
Okay.
The aim was, I realized, was to get into an optimum state for healing, because there's no fix. So if I can actually get my body and mind in the optimum state for healing, well, that's literally as much as I can do. So, in relation, in terms of externally, it was to distance myself from things that cause me stress and upset and turmoil, or to get myself distance from that, because the more rest I can have, the more chance I have of healing. And internally, it was to change the relationship with internal stresses, to relax and heal. And the same as, if you have a motorbike or a car crash or something like that, you're told rest, So the optimum state for healing is the activation of the parasympathetic nervous system, which means to rest and to relax. And, of course, it was very hard to do that with everything that was going on with the doctors and becoming homeless and all that stuff. But that was still the practice. It doesn't change. It doesn't matter what the stresses are. It doesn't change. So whether your stresses are small or big, it makes no difference. For me, relaxing and healing became synonymous. If I'm in a relaxed state, I'm in a healing state. And it's literally true. So I started to cultivate a healthy mental state. And so by changing my attitudes, particularly my attitudes of how I respond to different things. So instead of having a stressful reaction, I'll be practicing having a calmer reaction. And I'd use things which I call observable facts. Here's what we can all observe is we are all alive. There's nobody here listening to this who isn't alive. So if you're alive, you have health. I'm jumping forwards a little bit. So instead of reacting intensely, is to react in a calmer way. So inducing a calmer state of mind was and emotions. It's not just mental; it's how we actually feel as well. So I do that through belly breathing because that's one of the key ways of actually stimulating the parasympathetic system. Because that's what we do when we sleep. We start belly breathing, so it activates that. If something was causing me stress, I'd ask myself questions. Can I do something about it? The answer is no. Well, can I accept it? If the answer is still no, then I need to do therapy because I'm in an unacceptable situation, and that's going to cause conflict. There's no avoiding that. To be in a healthy mental state, that has to be faced and resolved. So I was using the placebo effect and practicing making small choices, relaxation, breathing, and meditation. These were all the 5 or so key factors in my practice of developing a healthy mind. So I explained briefly the placebo effect. I know you're probably all aware of it, but it's taken account of by scientists in when they're doing drug trials, because if a person is taking pills and they think it's going to do them some good, then that actually has an impact. So if it didn't have any impact, they wouldn't be spending hundreds of millions of extra to take account of it. So placebo effect is very real. Scientifically, it's total fact. Now, we need to be a bit careful in how we deal with placebo, because if you can't just say to yourself, well, drinking this tea is going to heal me. You can't force yourself to believe something which you don't already believe. But this is where observable facts come in useful. Because we are alive, we have health. If I didn't have any health, I wouldn't be able to speak to you. If you didn't have any health, well, you wouldn't be able to hear me. Even if you're on a machine to replace breathing, even if you're on one of them and it's replacing your chest movement, your body is still expressing the carbon dioxide and taking in the oxygen. It's still doing everything it can to maintain health. So we always have health. And our health then can be amplified by the parasympathetic state. So we, by basing ourselves in health, we can amplify it. So I developed a technique which was to act from health and to act towards health. So right now I'm speaking because I have health, but I'm also doing this to be healthy as well. If I felt or thought that this activity I'm doing right now with you was not, if it wasn't for me to be healthier, I just wouldn't do it. I avoid things which don't make me healthier. It's really simple like that. And so we can use that, and we can use the art or the practice of small choices. Because of course we can't just make one choice and our whole story is based on health. In fact, we have to do a lot of small choices. The big choices we know bring us stress, and can also bring failure and bring a lot more difficulty. But the smaller a choice we make is, the easier it is for us to do. And interestingly, the value of success we get from doing something small is the same that we get from doing something big. I was talking to somebody recently who had finished her PhD. She was happy for one day and it was gone, she spent years doing it. We need to practice making small choices. And I'd learned this practice previously. Well, I was looking for what was the smallest choice that I can make now in the state that I'm in. And that was for my breathing. Because every time we breathe in a more relaxed way, we're contributing to our health. So the fact that I'm breathing means I have health. And I'm breathing to be healthy as well. This very simple principle can be applied to all physical activities, states of mind, and emotions. So, is it something strange going on there on my screen? So we can apply this smallest choice to our breathing, to taking a step. I do it with my step work an awful lot. But if all you can do is open your mouth or move your finger, you can do that. And you do it because you have health and you're doing it to be healthy as well. So it gives a different orientation for physical activities. I will talk more about physical activities next week. And this technique works with emotions that stress us too. Because when we have, because when we're aware, the fact that we're actually aware in itself is an aspect of health. That is health. If we had no awareness, then we've no mental health at all. But if we have awareness, if we can be aware of something, even if whether it's negative or positive, doesn't matter. But the fact that we have awareness, we have health. And if we notice that we can be aware, then it's possible that we can be emotionally different. So the question I used to ask myself, and I had a lot of emotional difficulties with everything that was going on. Is it possible for me to respond in a calmer way? Sometimes the answer was no, this is just too much, and take my distance and try and do something that will help me be calmer. But can I imagine at some stage in the future doing this, responding in a calmer way? Well, yeah, I can imagine that it's possible. I can imagine that it's possible. So even that small yes there is enough to make a difference, because we can work towards that possibility by doing other practices that help develop our calmness. So yeah, if we can't go along and do that, then we investigate why and look for outside help if we need to. If we can go along and see that possibility of responding in a calmer way, then we can ask, what is the smallest step I can take towards that? Now, I don't even need to tell anybody about it. What is that smallest step that I can take? And if we can't do that, let's find a smaller step, which can be as simple as taking a sip of water, or just listening to your breathing, or it can literally be anything, because you're alive. So this relaxed state, I try to stay in, as much as possible throughout the day, and it's the basis for all activities, from everything moving, going to the toilet, dressing, making food. Everything is to be in this more relaxed state where I'm actively engaged in being calmer. And if I couldn't be in it, I'd stop and relax until I was in a relaxed state, and I'd be in it again. I think this slide should be somewhere else in it, but don't worry. So
That's okay. I can't emphasize this enough. What Tony's talking about right now is exactly what we talked about with Eric Edney, with Stephen Sherry, with every single ALS reversal, Evie McDonald, Joyce Brown. They learned how to change their state of mind. If you're in a stressful state, your cells cannot heal. And so what Lazarus has done is he's taking every moment of every day and saying, I'm going to be in this relaxed state. And that changes everything. It allows his body to heal. Go ahead.
It's slightly different from I'm going to be in that state. It's more I can notice something which is relaxed right now. That brings the relaxation into the present. Or if it's I'm going to be in that relaxed state, it puts it into the future. So it's really the activity, and the breathing is the most universal and easiest one to notice. But even noticing the fact that we're alive will do, and that is, as you said, it's a complete mental transformation.
Okay, so just to make it really clear, if you're not in a relaxed state, you literally stop what you're doing until you are.
Yeah, you have to find some peace somewhere in yourself or in your life or in your reality, whether it's sitting by a tree or doing therapy or anything that you do. One of the things that I focused on a lot at one stage was that I noticed that when we're stressed, and I'm sure everybody's aware of this in relation to breathing, we tend to breathe from our upper chest. So when we're stressed, the whole body has a contraction to it. And it happens when we're cold as well. There's a contraction in the body. So one of the things that I was practicing was so that my body wouldn't have this contraction in it. So I would pay attention to noticing the contraction in the body, and then I'd be responding to my muscle of relaxation. So I just relax with it, because you don't reject stress. You have to accept it. And in a peaceful way, the acceptance helps to transform it, but you're not going to reject it. So I think that's really most of that. So there's an exercise in mirroring, but I really need more time. I'll come back to it at the end if I can. Stress, yeah. So I'd realized earlier that any stress made symptoms worse. After 2017, applied that stress management at a new level, started using exercises involved neuroplasticity, which I knew from reading it was possible for neurons to heal. So my aim was to increase the possibility of the neurons healing. All stressful thoughts that we have going on our head have unresolved emotions in their roots. And we can't simply deny that or wash over it. We do actually have to face it, because our reality is happening. These emotions are there. And if we're immobile or in abusive situations or unable to communicate, we can't ignore that. We have to accept that and the stressful responses that we have to it. So change means clearing those stresses, clearing the negativity. It means dealing with the traumatic emotions and relationships. So these are some of the stressful thoughts, examples of them. I'm not going to be able to look after myself, my family. I'm going to die, which I didn't actually mind that one in itself. I would be trapped in my body. I'm going to be 100% dependent on others. I'm losing my life, which I'm living and which is valuable to me. I'd rather end my life than be medically abused by doctors. And that was a key one for me. And I realized if I didn't improve my symptoms on my own, that I was going to die. So, in dealing and facing these, the difficult thoughts which upset us and depress us or make us feel despair, by facing them, we have energy because those emotions give us energy. I noticed that when I was reacting to something, and it was anxious. It was an anxious reaction, and with the anxious reaction, I started talking to myself, "But hang on, these emotions are actually giving me the energy to respond to this situation. The anxiety isn't asking me to sit on curled up, in a ball hiding away. It's actually, when you're anxious, you want to move, it's actually giving energy to do something." And I consider it and says, well, actually, in some ways, that's true of all emotions. They're all there to actually give us energy. So our fear of emotions is misplaced. It's misplaced. So emotions then become a source of strength. So the despair that I felt and that I experienced in my situation started to become a source of strength. Example, stressful thought. Okay, I've really covered that. So we have, and how we deal with this is with breathing, which I've gone into a little bit, is the breathing crosses over between the psychological and physical. And the belly breathing stimulates the parasympathetic system, so it puts us in this state of healing and recovery. When we breathe from our chest, it's a stressful breathing, and breathing from the belly is relaxing. So we can just use breathing as a means of developing a different relationship with our emotions. Because if we're feeling anxious, what often happens is that we have an anxious reaction to our anxiety. So what I'm suggesting is we have the anxiety and we learn to react in a calm way to it. But for that to work, we have to accept the cause of that anxiety as well and respond to it in some way, no matter how small, but we must respond to it. I was practicing meditation from 18. So it gave me a space and an experience which wasn't dependent on the present circumstances. And it's a very interesting thing, and it's a bit hard to describe unless you've had that kind of experience. In that meditative space, everything is accepted. In that meditative space, there's an impersonal experience. It's not about me. So sometimes I think in the Zen they sometimes call it the void, because it's not one thing, it's everything. So that practice of meditation, part of it is that the practice of developing a calmer response to our internal reactions and what we have going on. So the practice of meditation, I think, is really useful, and in some ways I've described it already. The word meditation actually comes from the Latin meaning meditatio, which means to become one with. So it's not a kind of transcendent meditation where you're separating yourself from everything. but one in which you accept the reality that we have. Because that's where there's a really powerful piece. This is shot earlier today. This is where I live. It's the sea beside me, and just catching the sun on the waters. And so it just has a moment of meditation. It's just there to be experienced. It doesn't really take us to do anything. We can just notice it. So the practice of meditation, there's lots of it, and very complex ones. I'll keep things absolutely simple. And so, and really the key word, if you're looking at this, is the word notice. And so if you want, you can just do a very simple practice of meditation with me right now. So I just ask you to notice the first sensation that you can feel physically in your body. So notice your breathing. Notice that the rise and fall of your chest. Notice the air passing in and out through your nose or mouth. Notice the quietness. Notice the sense of gravity that your body has with the bed or chair. So if you see, you might have noticed that all of those things are quite neutral. And that's what we're kind of trying to engage with a little bit in meditation, something which is very neutral, which we don't have a strong reaction to. It's just a fact which is going on, like the sense of gravity, breathing, or any sensation. They're just facts. The body, if there's pain in the body, it's just a fact. Well, this was just describing some of the difficulties I had. Like, I could only whisper. My breathing was so bad a year ago that my chest wasn't moving at all. It got me months to actually get my chest active and moving. I had the belly breathing, which was good. And that meant that I didn't have any carbon dioxide problems. My oxygen remained okay. But the chest had stopped. I've been so ill for those period of months and with the steroids that my chest wasn't moving at all. And my speech was just a whisper. There's no volume of air going in it. And even since then, in the last 6 months, my memory and concentration have vastly improved. And that's some of the things that I'm taking for that are really, really helping. At one stage, I needed both hands to open the fridge because, the tips of my fingers had no strength with them, or using a keyboard, even slowly with, wrist work and still the tips would be out of action for a couple of weeks afterwards. So all of that strength has come back. Like, I couldn't hold the cushion because the fingers would just bend out. Now I can hold the cushion without any problem at all. And I'm beginning to hold heavier things, but I do it all with a lot of care and without straining myself. And how I do things physically we'll focus on next week. I still get muscle fatigue. That's still there. And I'm just working on it softly and gradually and gently, not being in any hurry at all, because that just brings stress with it.
Yeah, and just to let you know, those numbers were wrong. I don't. We messed around with version of the slide. So the ALSF was 27 at worst, and it's now 45. Just to get that, that's actually. So these numbers aren't quite right, but they're close. So it should be 27 and 45.
So now, return to life. I look like can walk around a bit naturally. Now I'm actually walking faster than some people at some stages. It's still precarious. Something went wrong. I was wearing the wrong shoe doing a bit of walking, and it put me back. So on Wednesday, my pace of walking was reduced by 2/3. I've lost it. It went down that quickly, that fast. Because my calf, I was wearing, I think it was the wrong shoes, and so it created some strain, and my calf contracted, and so I wasn't able to walk properly again. So it can happen really, really easily. But I love doing projects with other people and healing and meditation, and I hope to do a lot more of that. And I have a special couple of theatre projects that I'd like to do. So yeah, that's my future: living a healthy life and trying to spread health around. We've got an offer. I've made an offer to do a series of workshops for healing ALS. I think, do you want to explain that?
Yeah, go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is what we're doing, and it'll be at the same time on Wednesday. I think that's what we decided. You were going to confirm that with me.
I think it's going to be Tuesday.
Oh, it's going to change to Tuesdays. Okay.
Group on the Thursday, I mean.
Okay, so Tony said he was willing to do this was like a little pilot, do this with 12 people. So basically, if you're interested in doing it, it will be Tuesdays and at the same time, right? The same, which is 2 p.m. Eastern time, which is 8 p.m. Europe, 7 p.m. UK and Ireland. And we're going to do a 6 weeks. And I apologize, like I said, we've been playing around with slides back and forth, but it's Tuesdays, same time. And then once a week, maximum 1.5 hours. I think that's what we decided. Now, I think we reduced it to an hour.
I think an hour. And okay. We'll see with the first group. I'll have a discussion with the first group, and we'll make some decisions together about the best way to do it. But the aim of it is because we can have the knowledge and read the books and listen to talks and stuff like this, but we have to practice. We don't actually practice. It's a superficial effect. Practicing is what brings it home and starts to develop the skills which really help us to come into an optimum state for healing. So this short program is really about looking at the different things that I've talked about today and practicing. And so it's going to be very much participatory workshops where people are talking about what they've tried in these terms and the difficulty, and then we try to work to improve that, to get it to be healthier or easier or less stressful, stuff like that.
Okay, so this is something, and again, we just have to figure out how to minimize it. So we're gonna basically, if you're interested in doing this, we're gonna take the first 12 people, and it's advanced boot camp graduates only. You need to make a commitment to be there all 6 weeks. Obviously, if there's some emergency and you have to miss 1 week, it's not the end of the world, but you definitely need to have that time set aside. Again, Tuesdays, not Wednesdays. So just send an email if you're interested. So go ahead. Let's go on to the next slide. We'll give the group feedback from this group. See how, because this takes time. This is not easy. It takes time. Evie McDonald said it took her months to get this. And Tony, how long did it take you to get into this point of, hey, I'm relaxed most of the time now. I'm relaxed. You make this effort.
Really, really last year. I mean, I still have conflict. I still have stresses going on. It's not that it's over. I'm engaging with this all the time. But I have a good practice with it now. So it's not that I'm stress free. I'm just more productive with stress.
You're able to handle it better. Yeah. This is just so important. So next week we are going to talk about Tony's what he did physically, from vitamins to cannabis to everything that he did on the physical level. But nothing works on the physical level if your state of mind is not a positive healing state. And anyone, I don't care whether you just have if you have a tracheostomy and someone's breathing, your heart is beating. So as Tony said, you have health right now. Your heart is still beating. Start with there. You're still breathing, even if a machine is helping you. That piece is still there. Your skin still is protecting you. You have a body. It's still working, even though it may not work as well as it used to. It's still working. It's still supporting life. It's supporting your soul.
So these are the topics we'll be covering, or similar: meditation, small choices, using placebo, relax, rest and heal, facing stress, breathing and activities. These are some of the supplements that I've used, which have helped my brain work again. Because I wasn't able to talk this way 6 months ago. I had difficulties with conversations and stuff. I'd start a sentence, be halfway through it, and I'd forget what the beginning and the end was. So I don't really, and phosphatidylcholine has had a huge impact. Within a day of taking phosphatidylcholine, my memory was better. I actually remembered where I put something, and it was gone before. So yeah, cannabis, ginkgo biloba, lion's mane reishi, Siberian ginseng, huperzine A, microdosing. And these are your books, Patricia.
Yeah, so you can just, you can stop your share.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, what we'd like to do is, since next week we're going to be discussing supplements, diet, anything to do with physical things, please save all your physical questions for next time. By the way, this is Hillary. She's back. Hi. And so please, save your questions for the mental piece, because if you've got this mental piece, then everything that you're doing with the diet and the supplements and the detox, all of a sudden it starts working. So this is key to your healing, what we're doing right now. So let's thank you. First of all, thank you, Tony, for sharing. What he's done is amazing. I'm excited that he's going to teach you to this small group. And believe me, anything that's learned in this small group will be brought back to the bigger group. But we're going to start with this small group and see how well Lazarus is at teaching this to a group of people, what he's been doing on a daily basis. And then we'll plan on coming back and getting some feedback from that. So
I was just extremely impressed with your presentation. It was very enlightening and very, positive. And so I want to congratulate you on figuring things out. And yes, we still have stress day to day, but you figured out a way to deal with it and get better. So, God bless you, and, keep on trucking, man. Never surrender.
Thank you.
fantastic.
And like you said, we're going to save a lot of the physical question, the questions about his physical things that he did to help that part, and just stick to the focus of today and the mental piece. So as I'm looking here, Tony, did you do any, this came from Pinnakin, pranayama yoga, or take any Ayurvedic therapies like panchakarma and Ayurvedic massages? Are you familiar with the Ayurvedic practices? Did that influence?
Yeah. Well, I did pranayama years ago. So, but the main breathing exercise I did when my chest was moving was Himalayan Qigong, which is really, really obscure. Well, it's an extremely vigorous type of Qigong. It doesn't look like the usual Qigong at all. But yeah, it's very similar to pranayama.
Okay, good. And then that belly breathing, is that similar to BOD?
BOD? I don't know
Yeah,
what that is.
that question came from Coney Rodriguez. Isn't that the breathing out dynamic, I believe? So, not sure. Okay.
It's a little different.
Okay. And then I think people had some questions, and this is good to clarify because with ALS and we have the bulbar effect, when you keep referencing your speech, and you didn't really lose the motor part of your speech. It was more the volume. Am I correct on that? Like when you spoke in a whisper, it was more the strength versus the bulbar effect of, correct?
Yeah, it was more the strength. I was still able to make the right sounds.
Okay.
Yeah, I still had that. But I had some, other bulbar symptoms, like with a very soft swallow. And there was at one stage, what year was it now? Was it last year or the year before? I think it was the year before. I don't know. And I woke up in the middle of the night, not being able to breathe at all. And, just asleep, and then you wake up and there's no breathing, nobody there beside me or anything like that. And I went, oh, I can't breathe. And I thought to myself, well, if I can't breathe within the next 3 minutes, I'm dead. So I'm not going to panic about this. If I'm going to die now, I'm going to do it calmly. And also, if I panic, there's a much bigger chance I'll do something wrong and not recover breathing. So once I had that thought was clearly in my mind, I was able to clear the throat, and there was very heavy phlegm. Okay. But there was a real problem with the epiglottis closing at that stage. That's what had developed. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, what can you do about the epiglottis? But there is actually something, and I put my hands behind my throat. What can you do about this? And I thought about it for a bit, and I realized that when we gargling is literally the exercise of the epiglottis opening and closing. And so I started to do, when my energy was up, and I only did, difficult exercises or challenging ones, I would only do them when my energy was up. I never did them when I was tired. I even stopped eating completely if I was tired. I just didn't do it. I'll wait until my energy is recovered a bit later on. And so I started doing, trying to do a dry gargle. So there was no water in it. It wasn't going to give me any problems. I was doing a dry gargle for a couple of weeks, and once I started to get a decent bit of motion, then I started to gargle with water, and I got it back. So okay. There's those symptoms. Some of those symptoms I've been dealing with as well.
Okay, good, thank you. And you've never been on a BiPAP or a ventilator, right? No. Okay. No. All right. Then I'd like to move on to Smina asks, how did you change your negative thoughts into positive?
I think that's what I've described for the last, 40 minutes or hour, really. Yeah. I don't know how to well,
I guess maybe
I try to say it to me. First of all, if I'm having a negative thought, well, I'm alive, so I have the possibility of responding to this negative thought in a different way.
Yeah.
And then you start to practicing that different way, which is calmer. And when you start to practice being calm, it starts to build up. It's like a muscle memory, but it's psychological. And so eventually, without even trying to focus on the negative thought, we've actually developed the capacity of responding to it in a calmer way. And that's enough to change the dynamic.
Okay. And James Getka had kind of, and I think that question kind of ties into, he had asked about why the doctors, you had just these horrible experiences with them. So that's a perfect example of having this tremendous negativity, tremendous amount of stress, and then kind of ties in with Smita's question of changing that, negative thoughts, experiences into positive. So yeah, if you want to kind of elaborate on that.
I realized that if I behaved in a beaten way from the doctor's abuse, and so I didn't stand up for myself anymore. If I behaved in this victim beaten way, then I believed I would die, because I'm not responding in a strong way.
Right.
So I responded in a strong way. So I did. At one stage I was seeing a therapist, and this was when I went to another doctor's appointment in different outpatients, and he had a new hospital folder, and he's looking at it in a very strange way. And I said to him, there's probably lies written in that. And he says to me, no, doctors don't lie. And he says, neurologists lie. And I says, does it confirm a diagnosis of motor neuron disease? And he says, no, it says they only found you with having motor neuron damage in December. And that was my third one. So he deliberately falsified my medical file. And, I was really crashing in. And I just said, no, I'd prefer to kill this doctor than to crash in on myself, And I'm not a violent person at all. I've never, ever been a violent person. But I had to, to deal with being attacked, because, this was really an attack on my being. So I chose to respond in a strong way, and so that it didn't matter what they did, I was not going to let go of the truth. Mm-hmm. And that was my anchor and my strength. So yeah, I think that.
Yeah, and I think that's huge for all of us to hear, because we've all not overall probably had great positive experiences. So this is what ties in with your meditation. I have a couple questions on just elaborating like your schedule. Somebody had asked if you meditated outside, how many times do you meditate a day? Is morning better? So just give us like what your kind of routine is.
I have, my routine is a smoothie in the morning and another smoothie in the evening. And I don't have a strict routine. It's quite chaotic, really, I suppose. Although there's not. No, that chaotic makes it sound very active. It's not that actively chaotic. But I don't have a strict routine at all. I have my better days and I have my worst days. So I don't tie myself to a strict routine. I just try and deal with the moment as it is, mm-hmm. and see what's the best thing for me to do in this moment. And as my good feeling and my strength builds up in the moment, I'm capable of doing more things later. And doing this talk now is an example of that.
Yeah. No, that's great.
You're meditating almost every minute. And Sally, we will get to you in just 1 minute. That's the difference. It's not you're going to be stressed all day and go meditate for an hour in the morning, half an hour in the morning and half an hour at night. It doesn't work that way. You've got to do this meditation it's like being in the moment all day and noticing where your mood is all day. And Lazarus isn't the only one that we've noticed with this. This is Abby McDonald. This is Stephen Sherry. They got into this point where they were doing it all day. This is what resonated with me so much when we were talking this week. I was just blown away at the fact that you can sort of teach it, because I was trying to get them to teach it, and it was Abby tried. She did a talk in September, and she did a talk at the conference. But the fact that we're actually going to try to teach this, because the stresses don't go away.
Right.
No.
It's
The stress
ongoing.
happens all the time to all
There's
of
always going to be more nonsense and whatever, that's life. So
Right.
it's going to happen. And, so it's practicing and getting into the habit of getting it into a state of being where you're dealing with the stress in a relaxed way.
Yeah. And you know what, if you have an opportunity, or, always we save the chats, there has been so many positive comments on, your sharing with us, Tony. I'd love for you to just read what everybody has commented. The only last thing, and then I think, Tish, as far as
Take those comments and send them to me. Is that possible on this?
Yes,
Yeah,
you
let's
can see them.
do
Actually,
that.
you can even copy them. Anyone can copy the comments, by the way. You just go to the chat, do a Command A or a Control A if you're on a PC, and you can just paste them anywhere.
Could you please talk a bit more about microdosing?
I don't do it every day, but it's made a huge difference to, particularly I've noticed in my communication with people. So I spent a lot of time being isolated as well, really some years. So that has really, really helped me. That has. Yeah.
Dr. Joyce, I want to tell you, I certainly enjoyed it. Did this.
No office days.
Thank you.
The only other thing that, and I'm sure we can dive in a little deeper next week too, but is a couple of people were talking about what returned. Like we saw that picture of your legs. Have you felt in your healing, you've gotten some of that muscle mass back? Somebody was referencing they've seen the use of your fingers. What level of recovery, I guess, share with us?
Well, one of the places I noticed, the way that your flesh goes really saggy underneath the arm there. So even on my right arm, which was the most damaged one, that's all tightened up. That's gone. Even the back of my shoulder blades, that's muscle now. It's firm. The muscles on my shoulders, it's firm muscle. It's strong. It's not loose. That the tone is all good, and I have that. It's everywhere.
Awesome.
Really everywhere.
And we'll dive in more next week too, because I know somebody else was asking an exercise question, but we'll shelve that more for the supplements, cannabis, and the exercise piece, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we will dwell in more of the physical next week. This was more of the mental this week. And so we are getting a little late on time. And I was going to start my goodbyes. Does anybody have one last question for him?
I just want to say this, Dr. Joyce, I just want to say I enjoyed it. If you can hear me, Scott.
I can hear you, Dr. Joyce, and thank you very much. I enjoyed it also, and I'm definitely looking forward to next week.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Nice
I'm
to
going to
meet
start
Tony.
saying my goodbyes to everybody. And
Goodbye,
we love
everybody.
you all. And bye-bye. We'll see
Talk with you more.
Thank you, Dave and Dr. Joyce and Carol and Mark over there. Bye-bye. We'll see
Bye-bye.
you. Okay, bye, Cynthia and Bill Blair. Bye, Dave. Bye-bye.
Yeah, and definitely take a look at Joyce's book. Order it. It is available now. It's only $11.99, and it definitely there's a lot of really cool things in it. So
That's fantastic. Absolutely. Bye, Robert Campbell. And thank you so much, Lazarus, for being here and sharing this wonderful story. Thank you for your personality. And thank you, Glenn. Nice to see you.
Thank
there.
you
It's
so
always
much,
good to see you.
guys. It was so
Take
great.
care. Hi, Larry. Nice to see you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Alfred. Bye-bye. Hey, Rob Listen, nice to see you there. Bye-bye. We'll see you. See you, Steve. See you, Douglas. We'll see you over there. Pat, Leah. Nice to see you.